Yeah, that was me who got kissed on the lips by him. And yeah, totally, man. Sure, that might have crossed some boundaries for some other people, but I was stoked. I was like, I cannot believe it. I was just like softly touching my lips the whole drive home. And yeah, that was just like kind of nice to see, because I think a guy like Mac DeMarco has, kept, and though he's like so outrageous and goofy, like I think that is really who he just truly is. And I think that's what people appreciate about him, is there's like a genuineness in his branding and how he presents himself. But the first interaction we've ever had with them, I was driving away and just being like, hey man, that was a great set. Like, what a boring thing to say. And his reaction was just to like kiss me on the lips and tell me that I wasn't his witness, I was his butterfly or something like that. And like, it's just so odd. So I don't know. Yeah, obviously it's 2020 and you can't go around kissing people without consent, but I was just kind of like touched that Mac DeMarco is as crazy a dude in like an interaction like that as he is when he's like, playing a show or whatever. I think we were all like 20. He had lost this game Crib, and the like punishment for losing this game 5 times in a row was getting skunk tattooed on his ass, because when you get beaten that game, it's called getting skunked. And right before he was going, he went to the bathroom to like clean off his ass so that, our friend could stick and poke him. And I was like, oh, we should write something other than skunk. Wouldn't that be funny? And our friend Tom was like, yeah, well, you should write Fuckboy. And our friend Peter, who's in the band, plays bass, was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And he did it. And at first, Neil did not take it well. He was like, this isn't Jackass. Like, you can't be doing this. Like, what if I go to prison one day? I was like, don't go to prison, dude. Like, even before the tattoo, you were not going to do well in that place. So I don't know. He likes it now. He finds it funny. But it was like pretty tense for like a week after we did that to him, like, because we thought it would just be hilarious, and he was like, no, this is way over my line, sorry guys. Which, fair enough. Who wants fuckboy tattooed on their ass? It's a better story than if he had skunk tattooed on his ass, that's for sure. So I kind of like, I remember doing that to him, and Peter, who had done the tattoo, just feeling so bad immediately. And our friend Tom, who had suggested it, was like, I don't care. Like, you're being overly sensitive. And I was right in the middle where it's like, I'm sorry, but in a week, this will be really funny. And I think I ended up being right on that. So yeah, it ended up being a better story for sure. Yeah, that was when me and Mikey were living together. We had a wrestling themed birthday party for our friend Dan. And we just like built a ring, got some sumo suits, and yeah, our friend Dan is a good buddy of ours, but it was like planning a 12-year-old's birthday party. It was so funny. And then we all watched Nacho Libre that night, but basically the Fuckboy Blues music video came just out of the idea from having that party, and we were like, oh, let's just recreate that. So we actually went back to the house that me and Mikey lived in, which we had moved out of, and we asked our old landlord, because he was about to tear it down. We're like, can we just do one music video in this backyard real quick? And he said, yeah, and then they tore it down 2 months later. So that kind of like, kept that house in living memory through that music video, which I was stoked on. Writing is such an interesting thing. I think that, also in the journey of writing, you and your friends, at first it was like, hey, what kind of like sound, what kind of guitar riffs do I want on this record? Like, what kind of scales and stuff like that. And I was kind of like trying to come up with a lot more kind of like out there and weird guitar riffs, and would bring them to the guys to put over the songs, and they would kind of go like, it's a cool guitar riff, but like it doesn't really fit the song. And I was just trying to like force these parts that weren't necessarily very cohesive onto the song, but just like really had to take a step back and be like, okay, you know what, like, can't have any ego about these parts, and just need to serve the song as best as possible. So really, it's kind of like, what's the first thing that pops into your head when you hear, or the first thing that pops into my head when I hear Neil's song is usually the best thing for that song. Sometimes that takes a bit of time to like get that riff perfected, but we were so uncomfortable with the idea of writing songs in the studio before, and now we can do it very comfortably, even though like we're writing on the spot, because it's just like, okay, can we get something that feels good in the first 10 minutes of jamming the song? And if we can, then it's like that was the most raw interpretation of what you think should be played over this specific song. And that's a really good thing. You know, you don't want to overthink this stuff too much, but yeah, a lot of it's luck too. Like when I think about, you know, some of the riffs I'm most proud of, like Tommy's Party, like Neil just brought that song in, and that was the first thing I played over that melody. And I think it was just because I was feeling the emotion of what he was singing and like really affected by his like beautiful melodies. And then like something comes out of me because I'm trying to do that. And same with the other guys, you know, they're reacting to the song. And I think it's so hard to put into technical terms, but it really is just like an emotion thing. Like, you know, what kind of emotion is Neil expressing, and what does that emotion sound like on guitar? What does that emotion sound like when it comes to groove for drums? Like that's a very constant, like, yeah, it's a weird concept, but it's definitely the way I think we all think about it when we go into write. You know, I think one of the beautiful things about being a fresh band is you don't have really ideas of what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. And it's funny, but like listening back to Tommy's Party now, I'm just like, oh man, we could have cut out like a bridge. We could have cut out like a progression here. We could have made this thing more concise. I'm really happy we didn't. I'm happy it's 5 minutes long or whatever. And you just get to sit in that energy for a while. But you know, even with the music we love to listen to, like we're big fans of classic rock, and like we love the band and the Beatles. Like, it kind of like comes back to what I was talking to before about like, what's it like to write a pop song? Like, you know, do you really want to overdo the part, or do you want to give it to someone just enough so that they want to go back and listen to it again? Because there is like an art in like giving someone, like on one of those new songs we just wrote, where like we cut out a chorus like sooner than feels natural, but it's like we talked about it and we did that intentionally because we want someone to feel like, oh, I want more of that, you know, like how do we put that feeling into somebody? So I think we were thinking about that on You and Your Friends and going, you know, how can we construct this song to make someone go back and listen to it again, not feel like they've just, you know, been on a 6-minute acid trip while this was playing, and are like, okay, I'm good with that song for a while. That's not really what happened with Tommy's Party. Like that was a very successful song for us, but I think we just think about that a little bit more these days than we did when we were writing the first record. That was the most awkward show we've ever played, actually. But it was a lot of fun. My dad is like our number one fan. He loves the band so much. And he had just moved into this house, and we were like, oh man, we'll play like a show at your house. But he was like, okay. And we were like, okay, yeah, like if you want to have a housewarming, we'll do it. He was like, great. But he didn't really like organize a party. He just like told his friends to come over to like only a few of his friends to come over to his house that night. So there was probably like 10 people there, and it was so awkward. I thought like he was going to have like a housewarming. It would be, you know, like a big thing. But yeah, it was a lot of fun too. And we just love and appreciate my dad so much because he's literally flown around the world to go see us play in like Amsterdam, and he's always there and supportive. 100%. I think no matter what, you're going to run out of ideas if you're trying the same process over and over and over again. You know, like Neil really pushes himself with his songwriting, which I think is great, but like on the new songs we're recording right now, you know, even like something like buying a new guitar or like learning to play other songs, I think that's actually a huge maybe the biggest like inspiration for writing ourselves is that you learn how to play a song and you're like, oh, what's that chord they're using in that song? Or like, what's that change? That's so cool. I like that. And then we've like taken something from that song that we're covering and put it into our own song. Like Tommy's Party, the second chord is this like C sharp major 7th dominant fifth. Like I actually don't know what it's called, but it's a chord that we were covering, Freaking Out the Neighborhood by Mac DeMarco. And the first two chords of Freaking Out the Neighborhood by Mac DeMarco and Tommy's Party are the same two chords, because Neil just went, oh, okay, like I really like what he did there with that. Let me just like slow it down and add a different ending and write a new melody. But, you know, those like points of inspiration really help the writing process when we're trying to write. It's just really the feeling of noticing how many successful people in the entertainment industry are really miserable, and seeing that and just going like, well, okay, let's try to think, why is that? Like, how do we not come to a place where we actually aren't enjoying life? Because like, this isn't going to be worth doing, even if it goes well, if we're not enjoying doing it. And I think that, you know, we had a time when we were coming up where it was just super exciting. And, you know, this is a little bit embarrassing, but we wake up every morning and like look at how our Spotify was doing or something. And, you know, I would just notice, like, back then I would look at it, and the days that like monthly listeners went down, I was like, oh, that really bummed me out or something, you know? And there was no reason to be bummed out, but to like let that dictate my emotions was such a foolish thing to like put stock in. So yeah, just trying to like, I love this quote. I just heard it recently. Dave Chappelle, a comedian, said this, but he was like, if you're going to invest time into your celebrity self, the more you do that, the less self you have left for you. So, you know, the more we try to like cultivate our image and put effort into like who we are as a band, the less we really are like leaving for ourselves. And I think we're at a place where our branding really is just like who we are. You know, we're not really like trying to put anything on for anybody. We're just having a good time and just trying to like share the more real image of what day-to-day life is like for us. And I think that has been a much healthier way to approach like even the mild sense of fame that like we've experienced. But I just think that, yeah, that observation just really did come out of okay, how do we like maintain healthy relationships with each other and within ourselves through like something like this happening, you know, our band doing well? Because it seems like a weird question to have to ask yourself, but yeah, if you're not going to handle it well, then it's not going to serve you well. We were, that's what we were thinking. And then, you know, we kind of talked to the powers that be, and they were like, there's some issues with calling it that. And we just kind of gave into it. But I mean, I don't know. My grandma, like even the fact that there was a song called Fuckboy Blues, she found out on Facebook and sent me the most heartbreaking, like, I was so proud of you and what you were doing. And like, then I see the song title and I'm just worried about you. How could you ever be so crude, kind of thing. So I'm happy the album's not called that, just for my grandma's sake, but it was a good title. It's still a song title, so kind of got it in there. When we're together, we are goofing off like most of the time, for sure. We're not like, I can't think of specific conversations we've had, but when we're like in the studio together and stuff, there's not as many like hard, deep conversations we're having about where this is going and what we're doing. We are just like, Mikey is usually making us laugh, and we're like joking around with each other. And that's really like my favorite time with this band, is when we're just kind of like being goofy and having a blast. So that's more my memory of, or like my thoughts on the time we spent together. But as far as just like moments I remember that were big conversationally, I just remember like the feeling of when we first started coming up and us being so elated with each other that like, man, this is literally our dream come true. And sharing that feeling with someone is so special. I can't imagine how it would feel to be a solo artist and have that happen, because like when there's no one to share it with, I think it's a lot harder to enjoy. But those are like the most the most meaningful like memories I have of us just talking about this band and where it was going.